Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BETSPERTS.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy and I were just going back and forth on a little Cincinnati Masters, talking about Yuji Sugita. Real quick, Sugita, the Cincinnati kid, he was 7-4 lifetime at the Cincinnati Masters, 4-15 otherwise in
Masters events.
Masters events. Yeah,
that'll happen. I mean, some people have a place they like to play. I don't know.
Tennis has been rough this week, man. Not winning much. Don't like it. Ready for the U.S. Open.
The women's side is a little bit more reasonable. Honestly, the Chicago tournament has been a little more profitable than freaking Cincinnati. Get ready for the big one. Ready for Flushing. Speaking of Flushing,
that's the end of the
We're going to talk about the poop game today. We're going to talk about the poop game.
Oh, shit. Yeah, we are.
Bengals, Cleveland.
Yes.
Browns, Cleveland. That was, before we get to either team,
best game of the year.
My favorite game. A regular season game, maybe one of the most memorable regular season games I've ever watched. I'm trying to think of something that was better in the there's been some great playoff games.
Chiefs.
That
was pretty good.
That was a lot of fun. Honestly,
there's been some great Patriots Chiefs. A couple of those ones, like the Brady and Mahomes head to head, was pretty freaking amazing in the regular season.
Some Rodgers late game heroics. Was Fail Mary a playoff game?
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. I feel like there were so many of those that year when we had some ref issues. But yeah, the most fun I can remember, I was just stuck to the TV on that one. Like, what's going to happen next? The fourth down, it's like, oh my God, that's Lamar's music.
He's coming out of the tunnel.
He's coming out of the tunnel. That was awesome.
McSorley got hurt, and you're like, oh, what do we do now? And it was Lamar coming back out of the tunnel.
Yeah, it's fourth down. Their backup just got hurt. What's going to happen? It was like scripted. It was awesome. The Browns and the Ravens went to the playoffs. At some books, they are co-favorites. We actually looked at a few places, and the consensus is the Ravens are favored slightly most of the places I looked. Not
for now.
Yeah, for now. We'll get into that later, but we will start with the Browns. And did you just quick question, because I have a lot of hot takes. Not even hot. I just have a lot to say about last season. What were your overarching thoughts of the 2020 season for Cleveland?
They got themselves a coach.
I think that's long term. That's the biggest part. It was very exciting for the fan base, who is a long-suffering fan base. Nobody can use that term better than them. I'm not sure in any of the major sports, honestly. Maybe it's been a long time since the Mariners made the playoffs, man. But the Browns.
I'll give you three. I'll give you three. Three takeaways. They got themselves a coach. Stefanski is the guy
for sure.
Baker might be the guy, and he got a playoff win, which is big. Now he's not going to have to face the monkey on his back questions about the playoff win. Won his first ever playoff appearance, which is always good to see a guy come through in that moment. And then number three, it was clear and obvious what their issues were to be addressed in the offseason, in my opinion. Like, there was no ambiguity. Pass defense, fix it. And I think that was kind of I came out away from the season with that was a very successful year for the Browns, obviously making the playoffs, winning a playoff game, and especially with the rookie head coach. All of that I thought was a huge success for them. Great year for them.
Yeah, I looked at it, and again, I 100% agree, especially the coaching thing. That's such a massive thing, that finding your coach, finding your quarterback, finding your offensive scheme. Three biggest keys to getting it done long term. They definitely have the coach. They probably have the quarterback. I love the scheme. But I looked at the season as a massive success. They made the playoffs. They won the playoff game against a hated rival in kind of hilarious fashion. They really kind of pushed Kansas City. That final score probably wasn't as close as that indicated, but they pushed Kansas City. I thought that was a really good game, and really what
Do you want to talk about that game now?
We will. Let's talk about that game a little later, because I have when I actually dug in to the season, it felt like they kind of screwed up a little, and I'm not screwed up, but it
could have won that game.
it was, yeah, they could have won that game. They could have won, and it was like the regular season was kind of messy. Like it was really, it's like, oh, all you think about is like, man, they finally made the playoffs. The Browns won the playoff game. Then you look back. I mean, it's like you get this beautiful steak dinner, and with like fingerling potatoes, and that looks great and all. But then you dig it. Like, do you really want to dig in and like watch the cow get killed, or go out to Idaho and watch that guy fill out farm subsidy forms and shit? Like, if you watch how that season was made and go back through it, it's like this was messy. Like the wind for like a month, all those games with all the wind, the Raiders game, the Jets game where they didn't have any receivers. They did a playoff game without any coaches. Like the fact that the season had, and maybe this is honestly what I'm saying is probably a positive for this team, what they went through with, just stupid weather at home. There's some COVID problems in the regular season and in the playoffs. Losing OBJ in week 7 was the ACL. The fact that they did what they did, I think it's, I think we litigated the coach of the year a little too much. Honestly, it's like that was Stefanski's no doubter. Like Buffalo had a lot higher expectations, I feel like. So what he did, especially in his first season, kudos to Stefanski. But yeah, just the same things I said yesterday, and this kind of harkens back to everything we said about the NFC North when we were talking about this year. We're like, hey, the Vikings have a tough schedule. The Lions have a tough schedule. Everybody has a tough schedule. Like the schedules are semi-aligned. That's how it works with who you play in other divisions. That's 80 of your games. Last year, and I said a lot of my Steelers bet was based on an easy schedule as well as some other things. Both of these teams had super easy schedules last year too.
Yeah.
Like that's why we got 3 playoff teams out of this division. It wasn't just that. It was a combination of good teams, good quarterback play, good coaching. But yeah, they had easy schedules. And the funny thing is, if you look at the implied strength of schedules this year, the AFC North doesn't have it that much tougher.
No,
like
they got to play each other, but that's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So being a first place schedule sucks for Pittsburgh. Like they got to play some first place teams, but like Cleveland and Baltimore, if I don't know what these numbers are to make the playoffs, but they should probably be higher. Like this between the schedule and how these guys have set themselves up for long term, I think we're in real good shape down here in the old mistake by the lake.
You know what? The major takeaway I took away from all that you just said was you need context to evaluate 2020 and what it was. Mm-hmm. And I've heard a lot of people broad brush their 2020 season without the context. And every time I hear it, my gut reaction is to get mad, but then I actually get happy because there are some people who refuse to believe that the Browns are legit, and they point to stuff that typically is a good indicator of why you don't want to necessarily buy into the success of a team the prior season. But I don't think a lot of their points are relevant. And you're right, it was messy, but guess what? Of course your season is going to be messy when you have a dumpster fire of a secondary. Of course it is.
Yeah, you had a nice point on that too. It's good to know, like, and bad teams have, when we talk about the Jags or the Jets, like this team has a million holes. Here's the ones they tried to fill this year. It's nice when you get to this point where it's like, all right, we have something we're going to absolutely focus on this offseason. We need to address this to take the next step. And I mean, you nailed it. The secondary was it. Some good, a good piece or two. But yeah, the secondary was pretty far down the list.
Yeah. And I guess I want to point to a couple of games specifically and kind of talk through them. Their season opener was a disaster. They go at the Ravens. They were like 6-point dogs, and they were not ready for that game at all. And it was an embarrassment. And this was kind of a theme. Like they had when they had some stinkers last year, they really stunk. Like there was no ambiguity about their stinkers. When they came out and were unprepared, they performed poorly. And I'm looking right at that Ravens game. I'm looking at that first Steelers game. I'm looking at that Raiders game. The Ravens, Steelers, and Raiders games all in the first half of the season. They just came out and were not ready to play. And On the flip side, people are like, well, they were really lucky. They won a lot of one-score games. And if you consider those 50-50s, then, you know, their record wasn't quite as good as the 11-5 that you see in the standings. Well, I would also say that some of these quote unquote one-score games were not really one score. Even some of the, you know, the absolute beatdowns.
A couple of the losses, probably.
A couple of their losses where they just lost by gobs. You know, they were out of it by halftime. They were running a lot of garbage time stuff. They weren't really trying to get back into it. And a couple of their wins, you know, what I thought were there was a lot of garbage time scoring by, you know, the key example of this, I think, really is their week 13 win against the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah,
they won 41-35 in that game. And if you look at that game and you say, well, that was a lucky win, it was one score, they were lucky to win that one. I got news for you. That was an absolute ass kicking by the Browns. There was no question that they were the better team in that game. In fact, they were up 38-7 at halftime of that game. And you can say, well, if you're up that much, why does it end up being a one-score game? And the answer is the same, because teams could throw their way back into contention against this team.
That's the problem with the bad secondary.
Yeah. You want to know why the Seahawks were in a lot of coin flip games over the last couple of years? Because their secondary stunk. You want to know why the Atlanta Falcons continue to blow second half leads, fourth quarter leads? It's because their secondary stunk. Like, there is a common theme. If you don't have an ability to cover second and third wide receivers, when a team goes into desperation mode, every down is a passing down, you have one of two ways of getting off the field. If you're the defense, you either have strong coverage or you have a good pass rush. And the Browns had one guy capable of rushing the passer in Myles Garrett, and he did a capable job. He had a great season. He missed some time because of COVID, but otherwise he had a very, very solid season. Top 5 among all defensive players by my grades. At the same time, though, he's one man, and one man doesn't make a defense. One man does not make a defense. So it was pretty straightforward. You know, what to expect out of this team. I don't think any of us really saw them as the 6th seed in the playoffs and thought this team could, you know, they could put a couple wins together. They could go to the Super Bowl. It was kind of like it's only a matter of time. Somebody's going to hang just an absolute bananas number on them, and they're not going to be, you know, they're not going to advance. And, you know, we get to the, you know, I don't want to go too in depth with what happened with the Browns over the course of the season. There was some wild stuff. Obviously, the loss to the Jets because their entire receiving core was out was unfortunate.
Well, and that's the counterpoint to the one-score games. It's like, well, let's say they lose a couple of those one-score games, like losing to the Raiders because of the, you know, just the game getting thrown into a blender because it was played in a tornado, and then losing to the Jets because of the COVID stuff. And honestly, the final game, like if that game meant anything, I think the Browns. Even if Pittsburgh starts their starters, all of them in week 17, and the game actually meant something, that game could have been that was like watching a preseason game. Yeah. It was a really weird game, honestly, because it's like, does either team care right now? Like the playoff matchups are almost halfway set, and it was honestly one of the weirdest years for a team that, if you just want to look at it again from 10,000 feet, it's like 11-5 playoff team. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Let's break down some more of the 2020 season before we talk about their playoff run. Stefanski, you nailed it. Coach of the year, no doubter. Concepts he brought to the table were all absolute plus EV football. Everything we know and understand about how you run a game in terms of give your team a tactical advantage on the offensive side of the ball, sequencing your plays, pass heavy early on early downs to gain a lead, lean on your strength, which was your offensive line and your running game, to put away a lead. It was all just a masterclass of solid coaching. I don't think that was fluky whatsoever. Baker Mayfield's performance, also not fluky. He had a very, very solid, overall statistical performance, 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. The interceptions his prior year really brought, he came undone in a couple of games. On the basis of his interceptions, took them completely out of games, unglued, and he kept it together this year. And I think a lot of that was, you can point to, there is a specific reason why Baker Mayfield was good Baker Mayfield last year, and I think you probably know the answer to this.
honestly, besides the coaching, like he was pretty bad under pressure.
Yeah.
But you can coach your way out of that by calling different plays where you don't allow the pass rush to get to him. And the fact is, their offensive line is better. It's probably
Their pass pro was good.
Their pass pro was really, really good. If Baker's not pressured, he's a high-end quarterback. And really the pressure thing, again, if you're this coaching staff, and I feel like this coaching staff is smart, they realize like Baker still sucks under pressure, and we need to work on that. Like if you're working on anything with Mr. Mayfield this offseason, it's figuring out how he can improve his decision-making, his footwork, his movement, his everything when he is under pressure. Because if he adds that to his game, he's like his ceiling's the top 5 quarterback. If he sucks and struggles when he gets someone in his face like he has, it's it's not as good, and this team maybe can't realize how to take the next step.
EPA per dropback for Baker Mayfield with no pressure, 0.32 per pass. Number 9 in the NFL.
It's pretty good.
In the conversation with the with the Russell Wilsons and the Dak Prescotts of the league, right? Under pressure, Baker Mayfield minus 0.51, number 24 in the league. In the conversation with the Daniel Joneses and the Andy Daltons. So Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, under pressure, clean pocket. And the offensive line was a huge point of emphasis for the Browns heading into 2020 on top of finding a good coach. And they hit on both. I thought they did a great job of populating that offensive line with players who could play. Center was great. Wyatt Teller, out of nowhere, had an all-pro season by my numbers. He might have actually been an all-pro. They bring in Jack Conklin from Tennessee. That guy can ball. They draft Jedrick Wills from Bama. I think Bama, yes. Right? And he's no Wirfs maybe, but he's in the conversation. He's no Becton maybe. He's in the conversation. Better than the first guy that got drafted by Gettleman, right?
Williams.
Yeah, and I would say Andrew Thomas, right? The genericest.
That's the one I can't ever think of his name.
Super generic.
They're all W's except him. It feels like. Yeah. But Willis is good. Conklin, the right side pretty solid. Center and Bitonio is. I think you can probably not go out on a limb and say this at the end of this year. It could be the best offensive line. Like floor is just outside the top 5 if they have.
If they stay healthy,
injuries, you can't ever just go with if they all get hurt, they'll be really bad. Well, no shit. Like if they all still healthy, it's a top 5 offensive line, and that's what you need with a Baker Mayfield. And we haven't even talked about like the running backs are fucking really good too. They have a lot of pieces. It's just I don't know if it's just so anchored in our brain that like when you see a team in orange, they're not supposed to be good.
Well, we're gonna shatter some priors this year on the color association, I think. Okay, so offensive line was amazing, coaching was amazing. They get to the playoffs. They absolutely come out with the hair on fire against the Steelers. Everything went wrong for the Steelers. That was the Steelers were falling apart at the seams anyway, so you can't really say like that was a total shock. I think the Steelers got steamed in that one. The Steelers got steamed because there was a coaching COVID thing. Is that what happened?
The coaching COVID thing was, a bunch of coaches and then several players. I don't believe they were high-end players. There was a couple players. There was a couple players that did go missing. So like Stefanski, the tight ends coach, a couple other coaches. Honestly, it was like 6 coaches, a lineman, and then Denzel Ward was like the only player that I remember was like Denzel Ward is out. Like that.
I remember Garrett might have been back for that game, or he might have come back for the Chiefs game. But whatever the case was, Garrett was like 60% of the player on post-COVID. Like he obviously had been impacted by it. You could tell his conditioning and his ability to perform was a little impacted.
It was funny, and that's why it was funny.
I think he talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny steam because immediately, the Peyton Manning snap in the Super Bowl, it's like, oh no, this is a safety. And then it's like, oh no, this is a touchdown. And then it was 28-0 like that. And you brought this point up, and I'd love to go back and look how many times I clicked this, because you mentioned like, hey, what's the weakness on the Browns? Well, their secondary can't cover anybody. I hit so many live overs in this game. It's like whatever's in the 50s, whatever's in the 60s, we're just hitting this. And you watch the Steelers score a bunch of points and really never, maybe they were within one score a couple times. I'm not sure. It felt like they were always at arm's length. And then, the playoffs got a little tougher from there. Obviously, they get everybody back, but you do have the Chiefs. And they stopped. Honestly, it wasn't some big score fest. The Chiefs defense actually played pretty well.
Yeah, except that everyone forgets this, and I will never forget this. Heading into halftime, Cleveland was live in that game. They were live. Yep. They were holding the mighty Chiefs to field goal attempts. Harrison Butker was walking out there and kicking field goals. It wasn't
knocking down 50-yarders.
Yeah, knocking down 50-yarders. And the Browns were driving with an opportunity to put themselves right back into contention for the win. And Mayfield connects with Rashad Higgins, who is running free for the end zone, and gets speared in the helmet by Sorensen.
Out of the end zone.
Fumbles through the end zone in what was the dirtiest hit I remember from all of the playoffs. Not flagged.
Oh my God, he came out of nowhere like it was a T-ball.
He came out of nowhere and hit him right in the damn head, right in the head, and he fumbles through the end zone.
We were mad about that.
You know what?
We were very mad about that.
Hey, here's a word for John Mara. You want to fix something about your garbage, the garbage officiating that happens from time to time in your game? You can set aside the taunting stuff. Nobody gives a shit.
No, we love taunting.
It's part of the entertainment package. You know what you should do? Fix this stupid fucking rule about fumbling through the end zone. And at a minimum, if a guy gets concussed and fumbles, it should not be a bonus to the defensive player who spears him in the head. That was absolute garbage. That's happened a handful of times in my life in the playoffs. Every time it happens, I get sick because I'm just like, you know what? Like,
why do we bet this?
Well, yeah. What are we doing here?
What are we doing with our life? You know what evens out a fumble through the end zone is Mahomes getting hurt. Mahomes getting knocked out in the third quarter.
Yeah, stinger. Was it a stinger?
It was they would not let him back in the game because of concussion. Yeah. Wouldn't get back in. Yep. But honestly, the balls. This is why I forget about the fumble through the end zone. All I can remember is the balls they did to call the fourth down play where Henne threw the reach after the stupid the Chad Henne 10-yard scramble on third down to make it short. This is Chad Henne, guys, and I guess in the end, it's bad luck on that. But if you're gonna let Chad Henne beat you, next year, guys.
Yeah. So, that game was absolutely insane. Yeah, you brought it up. A couple things. Stefanski choked. He ran punted at the end of the fourth quarter when it was, again, he chose to punt, which was the only decision which there was any likelihood that you would never get the ball back. He elected to do that. Effectively ended his season by choice, which is never something that I would ever advocate for any coach of any in the NFL. And he and the defense letting up it was, you want to guess what that play was that Henne scrambled for? You want to guess third and what?
14. I just looked it up. Third and 14. And he almost had the first down. It was close to a first down. Yeah, I just went and looked that up because I'm like, it was third and long, right? I was 9 or 10. 14. My God, we are absolutely spending a long time on this 2020. This season deserves it, though. This was
of course. And Andy Reid, to his credit, fires away on the fourth down conversion. Doesn't even hesitate. Game over. Browns season over. Better luck next year. And that heads us into the offseason for the Cleveland Browns, which I give without even running through all of the things that they did. This was an A+.
I'm giving it an A- because I need to see it first.
A+.
They made the right moves, everything they did. And, we won't spend a lot of time on changes because most of what we want to talk about is the next topic, defensive upgrades. We've said it already. Drew made the point immediately. They knew what needed to happen. They went out and made it's like a lot of teams is like, oh, like Aaron Rodgers could use a second receiver. Well, we better draft a fullback and a quarterback then. Like there's teams where it's just like it's so painfully obvious. Like everybody in the world knows, like if that secondary were better, they wouldn't have to try to score 35 every game. I mean, it's almost like they're like a little better Tennessee Titans at some point. It's like, oh man, the secondary stinks.
The guys first of all, the guys you let walk out the door got signed by the Texans, the Bengals, the Titans, the Raiders. You did something right. You did something right. Yeah. And the guys that you brought in, literally, do you remember watching the Rams defense towards the end of the 2020 campaign?
As far as what?
As far as the secondary. And watching some games and having in the back of your head, I mean, I know Jalen Ramsey is good, but these other guys are fucking balling. Right?
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like if you have a really good secondary, a 4-point lead is a 2-score lead.
Yeah.
Because you can't kick 4-point field goals, and they certainly don't have 5-pointers either. It's not like there was a league that did that, and that was fun. But I think it might have been the XFL. So yeah, like a 4-point lead is a 2-score lead when your secondary is locked down. Yes. And if you can improve that, obviously, and I mean, I made a list of some changes. Yeah, they did lose some pass rush too. I don't know if Clowney moves the needle. Maybe. I mean, the guy's been on 4 teams in 4 years. That kind of speaks for itself, but
low expectations.
Low expectations. That's a cherry on top. I think what they did in the secondary was probably what's going to be the most important to taking that next step.
That's the entire story. The reason I brought up the Rams is because I had moments watching that secondary, and obviously that secondary and that defense was so good, it got Brandon Staley a head coaching job in the same city, for crying out loud. And I remember thinking like, okay, I know that Ramsey's amazing, and his just presence on the field is allowing some of these other guys to play a little bit more dynamically, and they're showing out because of it. And but at the same time, like I would if I want my team to go take a chance on those guys, the Browns got them both. They went out and got John Johnson, the safety, and Troy Hill, the cornerback, who were standout players for the Rams and by my grades, and they are now all of a sudden paired with Denzel Ward, paired with your first round draft pick.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and spent the first. Not only went out and got 2 fairly splashy moves in the secondary. You used, and then granted, they were deeper in the playoffs. It wasn't a really high pick, but you used your first round pick on your main problem, which I get drafting the highest, or who's valuable, best available player, but like when you're at this point and you really need to add a piece, and especially once you add that secondary stuff, it takes some pressure off this young kid. He doesn't have to come in and he'll probably, honestly, he might start anyway. He's going to play a bunch, but it does take some pressure off that. And then with your second round pick, you stole. You stole the guy who was mocked. He was mocked in the first round by a few people. I feel like he was always going to be early second round. But your secondary issue is probably pass rush front 7. You get a really good player in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Yep. And then the rest of the draft is just some nice depth spots. You get a depth receiver, you get another offensive lineman, which is your strength. But I'm guessing that was just, we have to take this guy at the spot, and then a bunch of defense after that. I think they ended with a receiver way down the. Sometimes those guys don't even make the team. They're halfway stacked at receiver, maybe not at receiver depth. Like Peoples-Jones isn't moving the needle for a 4th guy.
He'll get some.
I'm not even sure. I mean, he'll get some. Yeah, he'll get some playing time. But
he had an impressive preseason game. I got to be honest with you.
I know. I hate using preseason.
I know. I hate it too. But I was watching the Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, his plays from preseason week 1. You had to throw cold water on me. That guy was everywhere on the field, and he was playing so instinctually and so well. He is going to be an absolute difference maker. You know how high expectations were for, what was the guy that the Cardinals drafted that was kind of a tweener? Isaiah Simmons?
Simmons, yeah.
And they were like, man, if they can figure out what to do with this guy, they got something cool. I'll tell you what, I was so much more impressed with 1/2 of preseason from JOK compared to what we saw from Simmons all year last year. So JOK is going to be a player for this team, and he is going to be a problem for some of their opponents. I could not be more happy with their first two draft choices and their top 2 signings. I think they absolutely hit him out of the park. And yeah, you're right. Jadeveon Clowney getting him for $8 million. That's a steal. Like that's a very
if he works out, he works
friendly
out.
deal. Very team friendly.
Well, and the way he's bounced around, it kind of had to happen. Like he had to take that. And not to get off topic this is like when you start, like, I hate to be this guy, but no, you don't. You're fine being this guy, otherwise you wouldn't do it. Like, not to get off topic, but I'm kind of pumped for Simmons this year. I think the Simmons, Zayden Collins, and then you got Chandler Jones, and whatever's left of JJ Watt. Like, it might be an okay, and I'm not high on that team, but that might be fun. Like, I want Isaiah Simmons to be good. I liked him. I was pumped for him too. But yeah, JOK. I'm pumped for this guy. I'm pumped for this entire defense.
Yeah, you can't have too many corners.
This is one of those teams.
You can't have too many corners.
This is one of those teams that, like, people say, like, oh, everyone's pumping their tires and, like, they're mush now. Like, I don't care. Like, their roster's good enough and they have it where it matters in coaching. Like, it would be a very big surprise to me if this team was not 11-12 wins. Like, that would be very surprising to Andy at this point. Yeah. So yeah, the defensive upgrades, like, that's what's going to have to happen. That's what needed to happen. They made it happen. Now they just got to, perform on the field. And all of a sudden, this team doesn't have to keep going punch for punch with people. If they build a 10-point lead, they're a lot easier to keep it if you can shut people down when they are in catch-up mode.
Yeah. I gotta think a little harder about my A+ for them for the offseason, because they did one more thing that we didn't touch on. And a lot of people have weighed in on this. And that was that they gave Nick Chubb the bag. They gave him the bag.
Yeah.
Although I will defend this decision making, and not because
they use it right.
Not because of any kind of bias, not because magical thinking here. When I saw the numbers, I thought, or when I heard that they signed him, I was like, God damn it, you guys. What, you had such a good offseason going. And then when I saw the numbers, my gut was, oh, wow, they got him on exactly the right deal to make him happy and also not to royally F themselves in the Zeke Elliott, Todd Gurley mode. Like, that was my true reaction to this. And I will actually say that Nick Chubb can play. Everyone in the locker room knows he can play. They had two choices going into this season. They could have said, hey, we will give you a competitive deal, pay you, keep you around because we drafted you and we want you to stay and you're an important part of our team and you're a leader, blah, blah, blah. Or they could have said, look, we're never giving a running back money. You're playing for your future contract on another team this year. And that is a dangerous way to live when you have a team that's ready to win now, because that can send that sends messages to other guys in the locker room where it's like, oh, we're just, we don't really mean anything to this team, no matter how well we play. You're just going to use us up and spit us out, right? Like, it's a dangerous way to manage people, to act that way. And rather than treating them that way, I thought very thoughtfully came up with a number that doesn't really impact them from continuing to build around their nucleus, and also, fairly represents how valuable of a player he is to this team at this moment.
And yeah, I guess kind of a last point there would be Andrew Berry. Like, I like the way this team has been built. I like that it's tough to know a ton about some of these guys when they get GM jobs or they move around, but I think it speaks to everything they've done, the game planning, the roster building, how they've done it. And yeah, it was 3 years, 36. Like, I can live with that. You have to pay. You have to pay him something. And it wasn't a Zeke deal.
Anything under 40 anything under 40 was a win for this team. Anything under 40 was a win for this team. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. And that really, let's just assume the secondary works itself out because they have made the capital investment on it. The rest of the team plays well. OBJ plays a full season. You have great running backs. The best 1-2 punch of running backs I've seen, honestly, in a long time. A top 5 offensive line, 2 high-end receivers.
Yes.
Maybe the best pass rusher in the league. A good front seven, not great. They could use a little more pass rushing off the other side sometimes, and an improved secondary. Your biggest question mark really is probably Baker Mayfield. Because and really what you said, like we bet his interception over 2 years ago. He threw 3 in the season opener, which was electric for that.
Delightful.
And
Delightful.
he cleaned it up last year. He really cleaned things up. He was still bad under pressure, but the offensive line affords him, a lot of snaps where he's not under pressure, so that makes him a lot better. He lost his best receiver in week 7. He played in a wind tunnel for essentially a month. He had to play with no receivers for one game off a hot team coming off a win in the Jets. And he played in a really tough division. So I'm like, I feel like I could cut him a break, but at the same time, it's like, he's like, man, like I'm trying to think of, like, I'm trying to compare him to like a kid who just keeps doing something naughty and then you trust him again. He's Loki from the Marvel universe. Like you're like, oh, you're going to be good now. And then he never is because he's the god of mischief. Like you just wonder, it's like, is he going to regress? Is he going to revert back to some of those bad habits from 2019? I hope not, but I am not a quarterback whisperer by any means.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to have to take 2 major shifts. One is the coaching staff's going to have to forget how to coach. And 2, the offensive line's going to have to get injured. Right. I mean, those are the 2 things that could threaten Baker Mayfield's ceiling this year, the way I see it, at least. And I guess I don't think that expectations are all that high for him, really, even, which is crazy to say. Kid's coming off of his first playoff win, first playoff season, playoff win, number 1 overall pick, former Heisman winner, but the expectations are reasonably set. They're reasonably set, right? I mean, we're asking him to be average. And if he's average, this team's going to be very, very freaking good. And I think that actually potentially gives him some room to do something awesome, honestly. And if he's got the gunslinger mentality and if he operates, a la Brett Favre out there and is winning games where they should probably lose because things didn't bounce their way, that just adds to the potential of this team. I think, the point you bring up is fair, which is there is a bad Baker in there. And if he ends up under pressure, if he ends up in comeback situations that are helpless against a vicious pass rush, it can go sideways. And ultimately, if you're to tell me that the Browns don't get to the Super Bowl this year or that they don't even get to the AFC title game, I'm probably saying, oh, well, then their offensive line got hurt or they ran into just a white hot defense at the wrong time. Like that's basically what I see stopping this team from reaching their potential, which based on my numbers is an AFC title game this year.
Well, and I mean, the biggest thing, my last point on Baker is probably like, hey, the coaching stuff. You look at the 2018 Cleveland team. Like, who was it? Kitchens? Was that Kitchens' first or Kitchens
Freddie.
Probably his last.
His only
Kitchens,
season.
Like,
yeah, it was only season.
It was his first and his last year. Like the Freddie kid. Like, go look at what Baker did, and I mean, honestly, just an absolute quarterback factory at this point under Lincoln now, who just pumps out first overall. He might pump out another one. Like it's favorite right now.
Go look at the year one roster.
Go Baker under a good Baker under a good coach versus Baker under Freddie Kitchens. I think we saw a sandwich of that with Lincoln Riley and Kevin Stefanski, and maybe it's similar to what we saw with Goff. Like, and honestly, Baker, I hold him in much higher regard than Jared Goff, but you see players play completely different when they're under just a shithead coach who doesn't know how to take them to that next level and get anything out of them. So I mean, can I just blame Freddie Kitchens? I mean, Baker surely is at fault for some stuff, but coaching absolutely makes a difference. You see that a lot in Buffalo. So I'm hopeful, but not super confident. And, we talked about schedules. We said it was easy last year. That's why we had 3 teams in the playoffs from this division. We said it's probably going to be fairly easy again this year. And so, I mean, maybe yet another reason to be bullish.
Josh Allen with a great coaching staff and a good roster made the AFC title game. Baker Mayfield with the good coaching staff and a talented roster can make the AFC title game. Absolutely.
I think no matter what happens this year, the AFC title game should be fire.
It should be absolutely awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And winner has a puncher's chance against Tampa. Is that your feel? We got a chance?
I think so. Boy, Tampa is just loaded. So,
Okay.
all right, should we look at the schedule?
Yeah, let's look at it. This is only the regular season schedule. This doesn't show their playoff games.
Tough start. Not the easiest start going to Arrowhead.
Let me flip that a little though.
Getting them right off the bat might not be the worst.
If you're gonna play KC and their revamped O-line and some new pieces on offense and a defense that's taken a step back from a personnel standpoint, wouldn't you rather have them week 1?
Honestly, if I have to go to Arrowhead at some point, I would cross out November and December. Yeah, for sure. Of course. Absolutely. So I'm talking September, October, and fuck it, might as well do it when it's early. You're not fatigued yet from travel. You can, you have lots. Not only that, but nobody gives a shit about the preseason whatsoever. Obviously, you have to put some time into your game plan, but you do have extra. And on the flip side, Andy Reid has had extra time to prep for you. But I don't think like Andy Reid with months extra is like that much. Like Andy Reid off the bat, yeah, it's better, but like he's already so high, like you can't go up so much. But like extra time to prep for this game will probably benefit. And yeah, I don't want to play Kansas City ever, but playing them early is probably a little better. And then the outside of the back-to-back versus Minnesota, that's a rough one. If Minnesota's defense does play well, and then you have to go play a Chargers defense, which I'm high on, that's a nasty back-to-back road spot where you're going to be small favorites, yes. But
yeah, that Chargers game is a little sneaky.
You got to go home or away, go play, and it's going to be loud as shit in that dome. You're not going to be used to that. No. And then you go back home, and then you have to fly out to the West Coast. You got to go to the West Coast for a Chargers game. That's going to be indoors as well, with a raucous, probably Cleveland crowd, really. San Diego doesn't have a fan base. But again, 2 road games against 2 probably tough defense with a nasty West Coast trip. Otherwise, Houston, Chicago, Arizona, Denver, Pittsburgh at home, Cincinnati on the road. You have to make some hay there because it is going to be a competitive division. We'll get to the Ravens here shortly. The Detroit game, the Vegas game, the Cincy game at home. Like you should probably be penciling those in as wins if the weather doesn't snatch them up, because you have some tough stuff at home. You got the weird back-to-back roadie with Green Bay and Pittsburgh late. You're playing
that's tough.
2 nasty cold weather teams. You're a cold weather team, but 2 nasty cold weather road games.
Sharpens you up for the playoffs, man.
Iron sharpens iron.
Yes. You don't want to be playing cupcakes down the whole home stretch. You want to be tough. You want to be game tested. You want to roll out. That Green Bay game is going to be awesome. Saturday, first of all. Saturday game between Cleveland and Green Bay. That is going to be literally that's your playoff. You're probably on the cusp of clinching a playoff spot at that point. That's your dress rehearsal, going up against a real team that's fighting for something, a real quarterback that's going to test your secondary. That's going to be a good one. Cannot wait for that game. But yeah, no, this schedule for the Browns and their quest to win the AFC North, their quest to win the AFC in general via getting the 1 seed in the bye, this schedule is about as good as you could possibly hope for. It is as good as you could possibly hope for from a sequencing standpoint. The back-to-back between Minnie and LA, unfortunate. Otherwise,
Green Bay, Pittsburgh too. I mean, Pittsburgh might not be as good, but it's still a tough division.
You can beat Dwayne Haskins on the road, but big deal.
Jordan Love and Dwayne Haskins late in the season, but Vegas. The fact is too, outside of that Chargers game, I mean, KC again. We did this I think on Monday too. KC is less of a travel spot since it's the first week of the season. But other than the Chargers game, Green Bay and Minnesota, those are your travel spots. Those are, Cleveland to Minneapolis is like hour 45, Cleveland to Green Bay, Appleton International, not that far. Like your road games are Baltimore, your road game, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. You don't have a lot of hard travel spots. And yeah, you get to play Detroit, Vegas, Cincinnati twice, Arizona, which we might be down on. Denver, you get at home. You get some advantageous spots in a few of those. So yeah, all these schedules for the AFC North are going to be a little on the easy side. And if things shake out right, if things don't work out in Minnesota with their revamp, if the first year coaching in LA with the Chargers doesn't work out, if Chicago, again, another team who plays Chicago early, is this going to be Andy Dalton? We don't know that. It's either Andy Dalton or maybe a rookie in his first game. Either way, I like Chicago earlier on, I think, before Fields can get his footing. So a lot of things did shake out right for this team, I think.
Okay. One more schedule thought. We talked about it on the schedule podcast. The Browns were gifted the ideal bye. Best
13.
buy.
We did pick 13, didn't we? Yeah.
The best, but it's not just the week. It's what happens around that week. You have Baltimore on the front end and Baltimore coming out at home. And in that interim, Baltimore has to go play Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah. That's a nasty three game spot for Baltimore.
Just a perfect if you are capable of winning the AFC North, you are doing it there. Right? Coin flip game at Baltimore. If you get that win, go into your bye, and then you host Baltimore coming out of Pittsburgh, you could probably put the division away week 14, realistically. It is a perfect schedule setup for the Browns. I don't know what they did to deserve it. The league did them a solid. The league did them a solid. This is the makeup for the league. This is the makeup for the league taking the old Browns and giving them to Baltimore. This is it. This is the makeup.
The Cleveland Browns 2021 schedule brought to you by Mayflower Movers. There you go. The Mayflower trucks are rolling up to bring them their trophies this year. And really, last thing too, this is funny, and I put this in the description too. If they make the playoffs, it'll be the first back-to-back playoff appearances since 88-89. The 89 championship game was Kozar Denver. If they'd have made that's the last time they made an AFC title game. Bernie effing Kozar and Denver. I said Denver. Elway,
right? Yeah, Elway and Denver.
Early Elway. Like when you say I like early Van Halen, I liked honestly late Elway was better, I guess, for championship standpoint. But early Elway and Bernie Kozar. It's been a long time. Let's look at their odds.
Let's do it. We've talked at length, by the way, and in fact, do you have the current odds for Myles Garrett Defensive Player of the Year? They're getting kind of ridiculous. They're getting kind of
3.5, 4, 5. Yeah, you can find a 5 maybe if you looked, but we got some 7.5, 6.5s, and that is my favorite position. My most profitable position will be Art Smith. Like that number was just pretty fucking high. I found it 25. Some other people said there's still 25s out there, but yeah, Garrett, probably my favorite position. That was one where we agreed instantly. It was like, oh my God.
What a perfect setup.
Especially if the rest of the defense improves around him and just gets, anything out of Jadeveon. It's like, oh my God, we can't put 2 hats on Garrett. Oh my God, he killed us. He had 6 sacks today.
2-3 coverage sacks, 2-3 sacks because he's not getting double teamed anymore. I mean, it is all and oh, by the way, a lot of your opponents are going to be playing from behind, obvious passing situations. Tuck your ears back, Myles Garrett, go get them. It's going to be a ton of fun. They get to go up against the Cincinnati O-line twice. They get to go up against the Pittsburgh O-line twice. they get a lot of nice spots there for a pass rusher. To win the Super Bowl, the Cleveland Browns are 15-1 right now at our guys win bet. That is bettable in my mind. My fair price for the Cleveland Browns to win the Super Bowl is just under 10-1. Believe it or not. I am very bullish on this team. The Cleveland Browns to win the AFC right now, plus 750 at WinBet. That is bettable by my numbers. I have a very, maybe this is the right time to talk about it. This year, I have the narrowest band of teams that I think are realistic Super Bowl contenders in the last about 5 years. You want to guess how many I have in my act could realistically win the Super Bowl? You want to guess how many teams are in that tier?
I have like 1.5 in the NFC.
I would only consider the Tampa Bay Bucks to win the Super Bowl. I'm only considering Tampa Bay in the NFC.
I have 5.
5, yeah, okay.
You're right. Usually I have like 4 4 in either league, or at
We're
5
talking
and
about
3.
two.
Like
Yeah.
8 is pretty usual. Like there's 8
Yeah.
teams that could win this.
Yes. Yeah. And some years it's more even. Some years it's like, man, this, like a lot of these teams. No, this year it's 5 for me. I think 5, you have 5 realistic teams that can win the Super Bowl. We've talked about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and why betting them now makes sense because of their schedule sequencing and how that number is going to get absolutely cratered once they roll out to a decent start. Similarly, I think Browns are bettable now. The other 3 teams I think are weight. I think the other 3 reasonable contenders in the Ravens, Bills, and Chiefs are all worth waiting on to find a better market entry point than you're going to get now. But ultimately, I think you can get a very solid negative hold on the house on those 5 teams. And you can argue with me about the Rams, the Niners, the Packers. I have various reasons why I don't think they can win the Super Bowl. You might have an NFC participant that is not the Bucs. I just don't see any of those teams competing with the cream of the crop in the AFC in the Super Bowl. So I'm going to hit those 5 ultimately and get a negative hold on the house in doing so. So
that
Browns
is the plan. Yeah, I have a couple little ones, but I'm waiting for best numbers on kind of everything. And yeah, there are time stander and definitely waiting on the Chiefs. Maybe waiting the longest on the Chiefs. Probably I think the Ravens I have a good weight on too. We'll get to that. But yeah, to make the playoffs minus 225, honestly, it should probably be higher, but you never know with injuries. Like bad things can happen, and the AFC is competitive. Like it's probably bettable, but I'm not. And then the regular season win total, if you can find a plus number at 10.5, I'd probably hit that pretty hard. Just the schedule is soft. Another reason to bet them early is that soft first half of the season outside of the Chiefs game and the road trip. Even if they split that road trip, it's like, oh man, this team's like 8-2. They're not going to be 15-1 to win the Super Bowl anymore. So definitely an early look on a Super Bowl bet on this team. And it feels weird to bet the Browns and feel serious about it to win the Super Bowl, but here we are.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember at what point I really thought this is happening during this offseason. And, it was just a perfect storm of they had the perfect offseason acquisition draft, and then seeing the schedule, it was like, okay, we're doing this. This is happening. Here we go, Browns. And yeah, here we go, Baker Mayfield. Real quick. Somebody brought it up in the chat. I don't want to scroll super far back to find it, but Mayfield MVP sprinkle at all for you? What's the right price?
They're gonna. I don't know if he'll have the touchdowns. Like he's gonna get vultured by his running backs. If he ends up with like 28 touchdowns, I don't know if that's an MVP when a couple other quarterbacks going to be high 30s. Even if it's like, man, they won 13, 14 games, that's a tough sell. If it's more of like a team effort and the defense is getting lauded as well, it depends on the number, but it's not the worst look.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Also, his volume in general might be down because they should presumably have a comfortable lead in a lot of these games, and it should be the Nick Chubb show. Nick Chubb show.
Nick Chubb just runs.
Put that shoulder on ice, buddy.
Well, that's the thing. They have.
I would bet anything. I would bet anything over 30-1. That's my price point. 30-1 or better. I'm in on Baker.
And that might be a grab during the season too. Like watch him go out there and Mahomes gets all the congratulations for a really good week 1, and then you bet it after that. So maybe bet it after week 1 when he looks.
What if he outduels?
Well, then you're fucked. Then this plan didn't work. It's a calculated risk.
No. I'm saying what if
really bad at calculations.
I'm saying Mayfield now as a defense if you're going to come hard at Mahomes in season, which I think I will.
Yeah, I don't think there's Mahomes fatigue now that we had the Rodgers year. MVP market's so fickle. It's media. We need to push it everywhere we can. So yeah, and if they do build big leads, it's going to be a running team in the second half. It's a tough sell, but 30-1 or better is probably worth a look. I might look at what the number is after week 1 if they lose and get a tickle there.
I think that is insurance for ultimately later playing hard towards the Mahomes market.
Yeah,
that's my feeling.
Before we move on to the Ravens, I don't have a play. I'm just going to mention our official DFS sponsors, PrizePicks, where you can still get your $100 100% instant deposit match up to $100 using the promo code Deep Dive. I did a golf play. I have a really good feeling about my golf play. Honestly, I've never lost a football leg yet. I don't have one yet because I didn't look too deep into the games, but we are doing a halftime show tomorrow. We will be doing another.
I actually have a conflict.
Oh, God damn it, Drew.
I should have told you before. I'm sorry.
You should have told Dan. You already made a cool graphic. All right, well, we'll figure something out. Either way, halftime show or not, I will have a PrizePicks play for tomorrow. I'll tweet it out. I think I'm going to win. I think I'm going to win this one because I absolutely nailed my Fitzmagic projections. And yeah, it might be a mixed one because I have some good thoughts on golf too. So get over there, download that, do it for us. We're free. This is not behind a paywall. This is the only thing. Just please download this at some point and make me look good to the sponsors. That would be great.
I'm downloading it right now.
Yeah. My wife said she's getting an account tonight.
Nice. Nice. Let's move on to the Rave Dogs. 2020 for the Ravens. I know a couple Baltimore homies like grew up there. And they call them the Rave Dogs. I laugh at them every time they do it, but now I find myself calling them the Rave Dogs. So I don't really have a strong take either way on the nickname. But the Baltimore Ravens are rightfully expected to be as good as they were the last two seasons, which was to say a clear and obvious AFC playoff team, a clear and obvious championship contender. And it is easy to see why. Considering that they have a bona fide quarterback, they have a bona fide coach, they have a structure and an infrastructure as far as an organization goes that is among the top in the NFL. Year in, year out, this team is going to compete, even if they manage to have some bad luck, which is what they had last year. In fact, if I look at their 2020 season as a whole, even though they started 5-1, it was underwhelming, it felt like. They had a very comfortable.
Washington wasn't good yet. Like Washington was an unknown,
and really, you know what, the air came out of this team week 3. The air came out of them week 3, and I'll tell you what happened. They played the Kansas City Chiefs at home, and there were some influential players in the space who bet the F out of the Ravens in that spot. They were 3-point favorites. They got bet up to 3.5. That takes a lot of what's the right word? Money.
Takes money and respect from the right. Not only the money, but respect, the right accounts have to.
That takes a lot of. That's a lot of credibility on the line that the Ravens were gonna be better than the Chiefs in that game, in that moment. And I did not get involved in that one. I don't think I played the Chiefs. Did you play the Chiefs? Did you play the Ravens?
I played the over 52.5.
You got lucky, wasn't there? Was that a backdoor over?
It was like
it was a
55,
over, right?
54, Ravens, something like that.
The game didn't. Here's the important part about it: the game didn't feel competitive. It didn't feel like the Ravens were in the same class, and that really set the price point for the Ravens for the rest of the season. Honestly, it really did.
Yeah, it was a big adjustment in your power rankings for sure.
Oh, without question. I mean, the market overall dinged them hard, and I bet them hard the next week against the Washington football team. I want to say they were 14-point favorites, and that was a squeaker. They won by 14. Maybe they were 13.5 point. I won that bet. I think they were 13-point favorites, and they just got that one over, even though that was a very convincing win outside the box score. Similarly, they beat the tar out of the Bengals. They barely beat the Eagles. Whoa, I don't remember that.
The Eagles game, the Eagles game was kind of an ugly one too. Like they had I mean, you're right. There was a couple of weird, ugly games, and really, my over shouldn't ever. Like there was 37 at half in that one. They were down big. Okay. They're down 17 though, because sometimes you feel bad about that. It's like, oh man, sometimes blowouts don't end up in a lot of scoring, even though second halves traditionally have more points, but sometimes a blowout can absolutely stymie that. You see that in the NBA a lot. It's completely
I didn't know what we played at halftime on that one. Do you remember?
I could go back and look. We probably looked at the Ravens, but I doubt it got there. They won the second half by 3. If they lost by 14,
did we play the Ravens team total over? Maybe that sounded familiar.
It could have been, yeah. And Femi hit it here too. That the Eagles game was like,
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Wentz went full Russ for like 3 minutes, hit a couple balls that maybe shouldn't have happened, and yeah, that game was it was ugly to probably, but at the same time, they shouldn't have let that sort of stuff happen if you're going to be a defensive team like that. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Like outside of everything else, that game just felt bad. It's like if you are going to look this bad, like what makes me think, you're going to be making a further step in the playoffs? Like, well,
Yeah.
why would I take this team to win the AFC? Like, they could probably still win and at that point too, everyone's like, oh my God, Pittsburgh's just never going to lose still.
Well, this is that you just
Once
nailed
we
it.
get further.
Week 8. Week 8, Pittsburgh is undefeated. Pittsburgh is undefeated. You're coming off your bye. You're hosting them. This is literally everyone I knew that had an opinion on the NFL. I think that week was like, Ravens get it done, but I don't know if I can lay the points. They get it done though. And
you know what I bet that week?
Did not. Please don't tell me it was the under.
I bet Pittsburgh -3.
Oh, no, against the Ravens? On the road?
The Ravens. On the road.
On the road?
On the road.
No, that wasn't was that really -3?
Week 8. I'm looking at it here. Maybe I'm looking at a different week. Never mind.
Yeah, you must be thinking
that. Didn't bet that game. I'm looking at the
Ravens were 4-point favorites there. Ravens were 4.
I was feeling pretty good about that for a second. I bet Pittsburgh in week 6. I don't know who they played that. I bet Pittsburgh a lot of Tennessee over the week before.
Yeah.
My week 8 card, pretty light.
Okay. All right.
Seattle -3. That got home. Yeah. I had to pull it up. So okay. I feel like I remember I was at the bar watching that, and it was like, oh man, Pittsburgh's going to lose this. Like Pittsburgh should lose this, and
they should.
That's not how that turned out.
They did not, and you know why? It's because Lamar had 3 very untimely turnovers. Actually, he only had 2. I thought he had. Oh no, he did have 3. I forgot. He had 4. He had 2. He fumbled 3 times, lost 2, and he threw 2 picks. One of them was returned for a touchdown.
Yeah, the Steelers just found their way back in the game magically.
Yes, and honestly, sitting there watching it, it was literally like, Lamar regression season. Like that was the major takeaway everyone had from that game was, this passing offense is now taking a step back. Lamar didn't do this last year. The Ravens didn't lose these games last year, and here they are now losing these games and in an advantage situation against an undefeated rival for your division. Now you're not only 2 games back on the Steelers, but you have a head-to-head loss against them, and people started losing a little faith. And you got a cheap price against them the next week. I backed them the next week against the Colts. You got a cheap price against them. You got a cheap price with them against the Patriots. I backed them against the Patriots, and they got their asses kicked by the Patriots in that game in bad weather. And at that point, Lamar regression season was on for real.
All right, there are 5 losses. Look at those teams. You got, the Steelers. You've got the Chiefs. Obviously, the Chiefs game was almost non-competitive. But you got those 5 games. And I don't want to, elevate all of those, say, it was just defensive coordinators. But those are teams outside of Tennessee, which is just that was such a weird loss.
That was an
overtime game. But, the other 4 teams, and you did see this later on in the season, and Cleveland tried. They just didn't have the secondary for it. But teams were able to figure out, hey, we're just going to go to a zone. And good luck, good luck having this guy who he does struggle a little in the passing game. He's obviously, we're going to let him run. We're going to spy him. Teams that had the defense, not that the Patriots defense was as much as it's been in some years, they had a lot of opt-outs, but the Steelers twice, really. I mean, the turnovers.
The second loss was the COVID loss.
Yeah, the second loss was the weird COVID game, but teams that could keep them to a lower score, outside of obviously the Pittsburgh game, which was they got to 24 and then that just stopped there. Some teams were able to pick a defense that worked to slow Lamar down and get yourself in games. And obviously the COVID one, I can't fault them for that one. It was an away game too. That's rough. But yeah, they probably could have, should have, would have gone 2-0 against the Steelers. This Tennessee game, goofy overtime game. God, they were 6-5 at one point.
Yeah, you run. Yeah, you're right. You run enough iterations of this season through the old algorithm.
13 games a lot.
They're winning 12, 13, 14 games a lot, honestly. And honestly, Lamar Jackson, I don't think you can sugarcoat it. He took a step backward last year in the regular season, and it was largely because of the attrition on the offensive line.
Yeah,
they lost
retirement and injury.
Hall of Famer. They lost the Hall of Famer Marshall Yanda, and Staley went out early. Was it the Chiefs game, or did he go out before that?
Staley's injury.
Ronnie Staley is a top 5 tackle, and he went out early. It was pretty clear and obvious that without just untouchable pass pro, Lamar was not going to be able to make the passing offense take a step forward. You were not going to get any return out of your drafting of Hollywood Brown. Miles Boykin was a bust. It was only really passing game to the likes of Mark Andrews and Willie Snead. And
it was the Steelers game. Yeah, Femi hit it there too. It was the Steelers game, week 8, and then he just effed his ankle up really bad, and it was one of those where it was done from the get-go.
Yeah, but we didn't lose faith in our Ravens. In fact, after that Steelers COVID loss, that was the time we were patiently waiting. I know you remember this. We were patiently waiting for there will be a moment where we dump on these guys to win the Super Bowl, and we're going to get a crazy price to do it. And we did it after that the COVID game. Lamar comes back from COVID. They beat the Cowboys convincingly. We had the Browns poop game, which was unfreaking real. That one, honestly, if they lost that game, if they had lost that game, I don't know that they make the playoffs. I mean, things were going.
They finished 11-5, and that was kind of the
that was the key.
I may have misspoke about that Browns game against the backups. I think maybe the Browns were probably in on the Colts loss, but I think the Browns I don't think the Browns went into week 17 with a playoff spot clinched. I think they needed a win or help, even though it was pretty likely they were in. So 11-5, 11-5 was 10-6 wasn't getting you in either way. 11-5 was needed to make the playoffs last year. So if you lose the poop game, which outside of being insanely entertaining on the field and the drama and stuff, the internet was undefeated for that game. It was so fun. But that was
decent chance. Decent chance Miami's in, you're out if you lose that game.
I forgot about Miami. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and that was a sweat and a half. It was so fun, partly because I had so much on the Ravens at just awesome prices. And then we knew what was coming down the stretch, which were 3 just eminently winnable games against the Jags, Giants, Bengals. And so it was, they head into the
they won those games by a combined 60 points.
Yeah, and they head into the playoffs with some momentum, and everything was, things were, it was like, yes, this is the blueprint the Chiefs used last year. They came on strong towards the end of the year. They come into the playoffs with some momentum, and then the rest of it was history. Well, they had a very, very stressful win in Tennessee, very stressful, and this win was largely based on not exactly on Lamar's play, not exactly on their scheme, not exactly. Their defense was
both
amazing.
Teams the way they decided to play the game.
Yeah, their defense was amazing. Lamar made a couple of key plays that he absolutely had to, and Mike Vrabel peed down his leg, and the Tennessee Titans lose. Baltimore advances with a 20-13 win that felt like it should have been a double-digit win, and it was only by 7 points, but that's fine. And they head to Buffalo with a chance to punch their ticket to the AFC Championship game, realize the potential that they didn't have the year before as they got eliminated early. And the Buffalo game, there was 25-mile-an-hour wind. It was just a mess of a weather game. The Buffalo Bills defense, the defense had a great scheme for them, really put them in situations they did not want to be in. And lo and behold, they have a chance at the end of the game to tie it at the goal line, 3rd and 6, and Lamar Jackson threw the most backbreaking pick 6 of the entire football season that I remember. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, and I think he got knocked out of the game too. Like that was
Next-
the week where that was the week where
it was the next play he hit his head, I think, in the end zone, right?
That was the week where every star quarterback went out with a concussion. It's like, oh my god, this is like a full on thing. Like that Will Smith movie was real. Like this is happening. Yeah, that pick six was something because it was, I suppose it was like 10-3.
It was 10-3.
It ended 17-3, I believe.
It was 10-3, and that was the end of the third quarter. And they were going in for the game tying score, and they had the wind at their backs in the fourth quarter. So it was literally just like punch this in, take a tie game into the fourth quarter, and you got this, guys. That was all that they had to do. And instead of tucking and running on third down and getting the easy touchdown, which we saw him do so effortlessly through the last 2 years.
Running backs.
2 years. Instead, he makes one of the more haphazard reads, throws it directly at Taron Johnson, who's a nobody at the time, really hadn't made any plays of note for the Bills all season. Picks him off, takes it to the house. 101-yard interception return for a touchdown. And that was it. And that's a wrap. And
at that point, yeah, you're not coming back from that. Just the way the weather was, the way the Bills defense was playing, the way your game plan had worked out so far, it was over. And yeah, we this one is a lot muddier because when we talked about the Browns, the Browns, and it's like we had a really clear picture of like, here's what you need to fix, and you could probably take the next step forward. Little muddier for the Ravens, I think.
Absolutely. And then I want to ask you the same question you asked me about the Browns at the end of their campaign, which ended that same weekend. Mm-hmm. Was it a successful 2020 year for the Ravens?
I guess they won the wild card game. Again, it wasn't pretty, but they beat the team that ousted them the year before. In fact, they did it on the road. Yeah, that would have been because they were a wild card team and Titans were the division champs. They won a road playoff game. Outside of the pick six, I mean, they were very competitive with the Bills. It just doesn't feel as much. It doesn't feel as successful. Everything's so relative in success with this. Like the Browns the Browns could have got embarrassed by the Steelers and they still been like, they made the playoffs and they were a joke for 3 decades. So that's a big deal. Like it feels like the Ravens had the Super Bowl win. They had those teams of the early 2000s. Like they've had a bunch of successful teams. It feels like they needed a little more for me to be too excited about this. Like, you won a playoff game, but they weren't impressive in the playoffs. They exited. It felt like they just did 2020 or 2019 all over again. Like it didn't feel like they took a meaningful step forward, even though like some of the things Lamar did with his legs were amazing. Some of the, what they did despite Yanda and Stan, it's having those injuries and a retirement on the offensive line, some of the issues they had on defense throughout the season, the COVID problems they had, and they still, they got there. It just feels like, I wonder, so I don't want to shit on the coaching staff. I like the coaching staff a lot, but what is wrong with the team once they make the playoffs? And yeah, I mean, looking at their offseason changes, do you think they did enough to address? I mean, what is the main problem? Like the passing game has to improve. I guess your first round pick was a wide receiver. As we sit right now here on August 18th, their entire wide receivers room is injured, which isn't good. They did draft a good guard too, but like, what do you? I don't feel like it's like some positional need that they need to fill in to make the next step forward. It's like, how are you turning into a pumpkin in the playoffs constantly? I don't have the answer. I'm not a coach.
Well, constantly. It's 2 years. You had one absolutely everything went wrong against the Titans, and then one weather game where you were
maybe that it's a small sample size problem.
Yeah,
but a couple other things bounce their way. They have 2 AFC title games. Yeah.
All that said, to take a small step backwards, the question of was it a successful season is tough to answer, because on the one hand, you got a playoff win for your young quarterback, which should presumably be a important thing for the future. Should help. You have a guy in Lamar Jackson that you can build a franchise around for years to come. That. But you wasted one of his prime athletic years without winning anything. And now there's 2 of them that have been used up. right?
You're still
How
on his
many?
rookie. You're still on his rookie.
You're still on his
deal.
rookie
That
deal,
feels good.
but you're still on his rookie deal. But how many years are you going to have the most athletic player in the NFL with the ball in his hand on every single offensive down? How many more years are you going to have that?
That's fair. Like it's not Tom Brady or a prototypical pocket passer where it's like, oh, this guy is good. Look, we drafted a good pocket passer. He can probably do this for 20 years if he wants to take team friendly deals and he stays healthy. Maybe we lose 1 year in there because of an early hit, but like a guy who is so predicated upon his shiftiness, his legs. Russ has done it for enough years where it's not like, oh man, he's 29, he's slow now, but you don't stay that fast. You don't stay that quick twitch. You're not going to be, you're not going to be this running quarterback when you're 33. It's not a forever thing. It doesn't just flip, but the bigger question is like the rookie deal. That's, if you can get something done in the rookie, you have so much money to spend in other places. I think they did address, obviously it wasn't a foreseen problem. Like the offensive line had, like you mentioned, Hall of Famer retired. Like Yondo was
that's true.
like losing those two offensive linemen. It wasn't something like, oh, this is a problem we saw coming. Yet they did go and address it with some things. They moved, they made the move to get Zeitler. They drafted another guard from an SEC offensive starter in third round.
In exactly the same way that the Browns' needs were obvious as the face on your as the face on your watch. They were very, very obvious. The Ravens' needs were obvious. They needed depth on the O-line. They need to invest dollars in the offense, and they specifically needed to find more variety, more types of receivers in the passing game to help overall buoy the passing offense, because the passing offense was not good last year. It was below average, in fact, and they had they continue to have the best rushing offense in the NFL, and it's not close. It's because of Lamar. But you need to be able to do it another way in order to win in the playoffs. By the time you get to the playoffs, there's a lot of tape on you. By the time you get to the playoffs, you're going up against some very good coaches, some very good teams, some very good personnel, some very good defenses. You need more. You need more multiples, and they didn't have it last 2 years. They couldn't make a play in the passing game even against the Titans. You remember how bad the Tennessee Titans defense was?
Yeah, and they, especially in the secondary, and really, I mean, it was a few things. Like they didn't have the strongest receiving room. Like that just goes without saying. Sammy Watkins, kind of low key, one of my favorite moves in the offseason, because that guy never gets any respect. Like, and yeah, he's got a big fat ass and he gets hurt all the time. But like Sammy Watkins, a healthy Sammy Watkins, is. Like maybe their best,
really good player.
Might be their best receiver. And like Mark Andrews, if he can get back to what he did a couple years ago, 2 years ago, really, like he had some issues. Brown dropped a lot of balls. If you go look at like his drop
right
rate,
about Andrews too. Andrews had cement hands at times.
Yeah,
it was
they had, I believe they had, if not the most, they were bottom 5 as far as how many, or top 5, however you want to rank it, as far as drops. Andrews, lots of drop. Brown, tons of drops. Drafting Bateman, bringing in Watkins. I love Dobbins. I love Edwards. Obviously, I love Jackson. Duvernay, not bad depth guy. He's not awful. If Andrews and Browns get maybe moisturize those hands a little, make them a little softer, stick them on those fucking gloves, and they don't have as many drops, all of a sudden the passing game, it's hard. You go look at it after the game, it's like, oh man, Lamar had a bad game. It's like, well, a lot of those were drops. Not a lot, but it just takes 2 or 3 drops to make a really decent game look kind of bad. And if the offensive line is improved, again, it's always a chess match. Like teams dropped into zone coverage. They weren't playing as much man-to-man against him. It was harder for him to beat that. And then you throw the drops on top of that. You throw extra pressure because the offensive line was hurt. Like, yeah, there were so many factors working against this passing game. And the thing is, like, if the Bateman, the Watkins, the offensive line, and some regression on drops improves, all of a sudden it's a very good offense again, because you have a very good offensive scheme. You have a game plan. It's hard to game. You don't game plan for drops. You don't game plan for, just some of the COVID issues. A lot of things working against them. And so I will go back and say, yes, it was a successful season because they were another team that fought through a lot. I think they played a Wednesday game. Like this was one of the teams
played
that
a
had
Tuesday game and a Wednesday game.
weird scheduling things. That can't. I mean, just the lack of continuity from a normal schedule messes with you. So yeah, the passing game, I don't know. Like everybody's hurt right now. That sucks. I mean, we're still in week 2 of the preseason, but if everybody gets healthy and the coaches do what the coaches do, I expect the passing game to be better.
Okay. Here's the one problem. Here's the 2 problems that I am worried about with the passing game. I agree with you. Their offseason was through the start of training camp. Their offseason was an A-. I thought they could have swung harder on wide receiver. They could have tried to make a trade for a true wide receiver 1, as opposed to still, I suppose, hoping Hollywood Brown becomes a wide receiver 1. But in the the bad luck they've had here to this point with Watkins, Brown missing all of camp to this point. Bateman's going to miss the first 4 games with the groin. They're realistically, I thought Miles Boykin was probably going to get cut, and he might be your wide receiver 1 for week 1. That's not great. And so where they swung for wide receiver to solve that problem to this point is not going well. And then the other major factor is, can their offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, learn a new trick? Can he learn a new trick?
Did you see the last comment? They did lose, and like we joked, but we made fun of Arthur Smith. We don't know. Maybe David Culley was the cog. It was never Greg Roman. It was always David Culley. He was here. I mean, he was with a good franchise. This is, I'm sure they looked at like what happened to this team over the last couple of years, and that didn't hurt David Culley's chances. But yeah, finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, can Greg Roman learn a new trick? A guy has one general scheme. It's pretty straightforward how you defend it at this point. The coaches that know, like there's not, there obviously when Lamar is playing at a 99th percentile, you don't have a chance anyway. But if he's not, if he's a little banged up, if his offensive line isn't cohesive, if his wide receivers can't create separation, there's a way to defend these guys. And Greg Roman needs to come up with something new that we haven't seen before in terms of how to get more production out of this passing offense. And honestly, I don't know that he can do it. I mean, he's a great running game coordinator. He's got a couple of wrinkles in his system that are just undefensible. But it is not clear to me that he can get the most out of this passing offense. And honestly, we might have seen there is a non-zero chance that we've seen the best of the Ravens offense under Lamar Jackson. Non-zero. It's not high. I think the world of this player. I desperately want to see him succeed in the playoffs. And I will be it will be like seeing Giannis succeed with the Bucks. Honestly, it'll be that level of joy that the collective feels because he is that well liked as far as just a personality in this league. But I don't know that we for sure are going to see if it doesn't happen, are you going to be surprised?
No, I mean, I see coaches fail at this more than I see them succeed. As much as I like, Roman, I like Harbaugh, I like everything there. Coaches fail at this more than they succeed, and that's the truth. So it wouldn't be surprising, but if enough of these things work out right, like the scheme becomes less of an issue if your number 1 receiver isn't dropping like 15% of his balls, if the number 1 draft pick of your team works out and he was another. I don't think we understand how good Tyler Johnson was because he got drafted by a team that didn't need him. Like I watched a bunch of Gophers game. Go ask Thor. Like Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson were absolute studs for a team that sucks. Like Minnesota's never been a good team. Like and for years they were just a running back factory. Like it was fun having receivers there for a couple of years for the local fans. But Bateman injury sucks. He could be a number 1. He could instantly, like I don't think Thielen's the number 1 in Minnesota. Like you can be a number 1 instantly as a rookie.
You can.
If these things happen, the injury probably greatly reduces those chances. But if Watkins, if Watkins or Bateman can become close to the number one, if they have multiple, like just 3-2s, that probably works too, because it's better than what they had last year. And yeah, you need more out of Mark Andrews.
Okay. What do we think about the offensive line with Stanley coming back and with the investments that they made, and particularly Ben Cleveland of Georgia at offensive guard? And they signed Kevin Zeitler too.
Zeitler, I think I was waiting
Villanueva
for you to get
as well. I forgot they traded Brown. They traded Orlando Brown, who did a very capable job in pass pro, I thought, or actually, very capable job in run blocking.
That's my negative.
Job in pass pro. Yeah,
a lot of turnover. See, Orlando Brown is with the Chiefs now. We'll get to them. You do bring Zeitler, very good, I think. Villanueva getting up there. They paid him more than I would hope to pay someone like that, but he's been good his whole career. I'm fine with that. And then you draft, you probably get a decent. I don't know if that was a steal. I'm not a draft Nick. I don't do a lot of these. I certainly don't mock things out to the third round, but they like the guy from Georgia and Ben Cleveland to get him at guard, and that's the biggest part. Is there is again very little continuity. Really, Stanley was hurt, but he's probably the only guy who's going to play where he played last year. Everyone else is kind of just moving around because they either didn't play here last year or Bozeman. Yeah, Bozeman didn't play center. Like he was a guard, so he's probably moving to center. And then you have a bunch of new stuff. So it either works or it doesn't. Like sometimes just mashing a bunch of guys together, no matter how the names are, it doesn't work right away. It might take some time for this offensive line to gel. I really like the veteran presence, I guess, on the right side, and Stanley's a stud. But if the Cleveland Bozeman thing doesn't work and you have a little bit of a problem in that left guard center combo, it could be an issue for my guy back there having to run around a little more than I like to.
Okay.
But yeah, the Zeitler move I like a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I'm there. The offensive line should be better, and honestly, they can be coached up. Like this is a team, is a very capable coaching staff, very good positional coaches. They can coach these guys up. Whether or not it happens week one, we'll see. In fact, honestly, the running game should be about 100% week one. Really, the passing game is going to be lagging massively. And so we're not going to get an answer to this question about this offense for a while. And let's look at the schedule and see if that's going to matter. Oh my God, that's a lot of blue.
It is a ton of blue.
They're only dogs in one game.
They're a good team. And again, we've said this whole team has an easy schedule. I'm looking at who their offensive line coach is. Joe D'Alessandris. That's a cool name, actually. Anybody who has a cool apostrophe in their name's all right with me. He was one of the ones who missed the game due to he actually just had an illness. He wasn't a COVID knockout, but he's been around. He's been all over the place, even the CFL, a little Chattanooga too. So D'Alessandris, I don't know anything about him at all. But the offensive line, hopefully under the rest of the lead coaches, your head coach, your offensive coordinator, and the rest of the gang, they can get it together. And yes, the schedule, a lot of blue. In fact, there's a bunch. You got the Detroit game, you got the Cincy game, you got the Minnesota at home, you've got Cincinnati on the road. You've got a bunch of those games where you're, 5 to 10 point favorites. You don't count those now, but it does feel a lot better than being 5 to 10 point dogs. And really, the Cleveland game, where they have Cleveland coming off their bye, is their only spot where they're a dog. The KC game wouldn't surprise me to see Kansas City a favorite as of right now, if you looked, and probably as it closes, especially if Cleveland dispatches Cleveland. If Kansas City dispatches Cleveland at home, I don't think it matters how hard you beat the Raiders. You're probably going to be a dog week 2, even at home, to KC. Maybe not a big dog, but -1, -2, something like that. So the rough spots, you see any real rough spots just based on a couple? I mean, the back-to-backs, it's like it's a back-to-back going to altitude. That's not great.
Week 12 to week 15 is nasty.
Yep.
This team's going to be battle-tested. Really, week 12 to week 18 is nasty. Those are all coin flip games, but you got to go Cleveland, Pitt, Cleveland. Cleveland's going to be coming out their bye for game 2, which we talked about already. Then you got to go Green Bay, Cincinnati, Rams, close with Pittsburgh. Yeah, 3 of your last 4 are at home. You got 4 out of 5 travel towards the end of the season there. That's not great.
And you do get a couple of nice advantageous spots against, let's say, tweener teams that you're not favored by a bunch against, like good teams, but you're at home. Indy, Monday Night Football game. Indy could be good. The quarterback situation has to figure itself out. Obviously, we're not high on Wentz, but also Indy on the back-to-back road game, the 3rd straight road game. That's a bad spot for a team that's, a 4-point dog there. The same thing with the Rams. The Rams are a higher-end team in the NFC. We'll see how the quarterback situation works out there. We haven't got to them yet, but they're on a back-to-back. You get, the Cleveland off the bye is a tough spot. The Chicago game might be a tough spot. It's at Chicago, not too late in the year. Fields might have his footing by that point. You get the Miami travel game, the back-to-back Miami, Chicago, extra rest off bye at Minnesota. That feels pretty good. Playing Minnesota at your place, I don't see any reason to bet that if that's 7.
Yeah, there's a lot of wins.
Not to bet that. There is a lot of wins. Even like the Cincinnati game, they're on a back-to-back roadie there. The 10-point favorite. That shouldn't be a doubter. So I mean, a couple rough spots at the Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. The fact that there's a bunch of road games in the last 6, the back-to-back ending in Denver, but you have enough advantageous spots where you should be absolutely the favorite to win this division. Okay. Just because you've done this for enough years, you have a good coaching staff, and you've made the necessary improvements to be a pretty decent team again.
Okay, that's fair. We got to do one thought exercise, though.
Oh, I like these.
Kansas City plays Cleveland and Baltimore week 1, week 2.
It's kind of like the Texans schedule from last year.
Kind of, yeah. Week 1, Browns are about a touchdown dog. So in my opinion, that's an asymmetrical market shift in perception if they win or lose. Browns win, people think about them differently. Browns lose, they were supposed to lose. Nobody really changes their opinion. Okay? Week 2, I think, is asymmetrical negatively for Baltimore.
Yeah,
that game's about to pick them. Yeah, that game's about to pick them. If you win, people are like, oh, cool, you finally got the monkey off your back. But, Kansas City was in a tough spot. That was a pick 'em. If you lose, you can't beat KC. You can't do it. You lose to them every time you play them. That becomes a very solid part of the narrative around this team.
Do you think the media would talk about that?
Yeah, they're not going to preview Detroit, Baltimore. I'll tell you that much. This is why I think it makes sense to bet the Browns now. You almost certainly only have, it's either nothing happens with that bet or the price goes down, right? With the Ravens, you could bet this price and it could very reasonably go up in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Which means we should look at these odds and figure out the right time to bet the Ravens.
Yeah, you're taking a risk because there's there's a non-zero chance that it absolutely goes the other way, but more likely to go one way than the other, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if they beat the Chiefs week 2, they'll get some credit, but I don't know that the people are going to run to the window and bet them to win the Super Bowl. Not week 2, right? There's not going to be an implosion on this price because it's a 50-50 game. They got the win, whatever. I mean, if they do what they did to the Rams to the Chiefs, which I think is very low likelihood, then these prices move, right? But if they just go out there and give you their A effort and it's not enough, or it is just enough, then I don't think you see much in terms of the Super Bowl price moving. Currently 14-1. I don't think that's bettable. AFC 6-1 currently. I don't think that's bettable. My fares on both those are a little higher. To win the AFC North plus 110, that's not bettable to me. My fare for them to win the AFC North is plus 155.
You're not getting that price anywhere.
Not right now, no.
No.
But maybe later this season you will. Question is when. So this is all market entries still. I don't even really know the answer to this. This isn't a big tease. I have the answer, but it's not now is all I can tell you.
No.
To make the
And
playoffs,
again, so
yes,
somebody
minus
did bring up
325.
somebody brought up
Yeah.
that Packers number.
Yeah.
We did
+5.
yank all these. All these numbers are from like a month ago. We're just at a static point where everybody took a weird stance and the Packers might not, like, they took a midpoint between Rodgers and Love. That number's probably 3.5 now.
I'll look up what it exactly is. But
I doubt it's like somebody brought, that's bettable at 5.5. Yeah, that's an absolute bet. That number is,
I mean, they might be still hanging these. Who knows?
I don't know. I haven't found it up anywhere. I don't know. Where'd you get those from?
Westgate.
Phone prices. Yeah, but I mean, you're right. The narrative is there, and yeah, it's like a team has more to lose, or however you want to phrase that, asymmetrically. But I mean that's kind of how it's looking. So I think waiting on them does make sense.
Okay. Even though we think they probably make their win total over and they're going to be in the mix, and this is a wild card team. I mean, if you had to say what percent, okay, my largest probability for their outcome for this regular season is the 5 seed in the AFC, and it's by a pretty good margin. This team most likely your best wild card team, double-digit wins. Just misses out on the division to the Browns.
A team with a wild card team who would be the 3 seed if they just seeded based on record.
Yeah, right.
So maybe they'll have a better record than the AFC South winner, and they'll have a better record than the
equal to or better than the Bills. Yeah,
it'll be right around the Bills.
Yeah,
because it's a soft schedule.
Yep. So, what if I want to make a bet on the Ravens? Right this moment, what's the right way to attack them? Player props. I got one that I am absolutely floored is available. Shocker.
Jeremy Shocker.
Jeremy Shocker.
Jeremy Shocker is not his name. Let me think about this now. And somebody did say it's -3 now with the that makes a lot more sense. Fair. So it's a player prop.
A player prop.
It's like Lamar rushing under. Did they set that way too? Did they set that way too high? I think they dial that back this year. I don't know, because I feel like they put that where everybody would. I'm bet the over in that. So you've got a player prop. Is it an award or is it a stat?
Stat.
It is a stat.
Stat for a player we have talked about.
Ben
we didn't
Cleveland.
really talk about there. We didn't even talk about their defense. No, it's not Ben Cleveland.
No, it's not a Ben Cleveland stat. I'm blanking. I mean, is it a Dobbins prop?
Nope.
I want to bet Dobbins. I like that kid a lot.
Yeah, he's good. He's going to get a lot of yards. Maybe not a lot of touchdowns. Going to let some people down in fantasy, but yeah.
Yeah, it's too much of a split there with Edwards. I'm lost. You're gonna have to tell me.
What would you? I
haven't looked at these prices. Yeah.
What would you line Mark Andrews' receptions? It's out of curiosity.
I mean, was he 50-ish last year?
He was targeted 88 times last year.
Okay, probably like 60 catches then.
He was targeted 98 times the previous season.
And is his receiving prop in like the 40s then?
No. It's 65 for Mark Andrews. And now you have an injured wide receiver core that's not getting reps with Lamar in the preseason. You have a 17th game.
Frustrating ticket to hold.
17th game. Why? Because he's going to drop so many?
Yes.
He only dropped 30 passes last year.
That's not so bad.
But no, it will be a frustrating ticket to hold. But he is going to get a ton of targets in this offense.
He was on the field for 65% of snaps last year. Yeah. I don't see that being any lower. I think didn't they lose a tight end?
They have Nick Boyle on the PUP,
I feel like Pup. I thought he was gone, so he's just injured.
Yeah, they have Boyle on the Pup, and they have or they traded Hayden Hurst to Atlanta before last season. So he was the other guy that was getting tight end reps.
Brought in Josh Oliver. I don't think he's going to steal a lot from him. So yeah, I can dig that.
65.5.
Yeah, you got
Mark
the extra
Andrews.
game.
I think he stays healthy. He makes that number.
I'll join you on that. That sounds like a fun one to complain. I can yell at you later in the season when he drops like 4 in one game.
No, he's going to. You know what? He's going to get 10 catches against the Raiders week 1 on Monday Night Football, and we're going to have a good old laugh about the number with 65. That's the plan.
He was their red zone target leader last year, too.
Obviously. Who else were they targeting in the
that kind of goes, it's like Marquise Brown turns into Julio down there, too. So, and that's not a good thing if you go back and look at Julio in the red zone. So, yeah. Maybe what's his touchdowns? That's interesting too. He had 21 red zone targets last year.
Oh, good question. I didn't look at touchdowns.
We'll look at that up later. That's interesting though. Yeah.
How many red zones did you say? 21?
21 red zone targets. You know, the second most was Marquise Brown with 12.
Wow. How many of those were converted to touchdowns? Because he only had 7 receiving touchdowns total. I can't imagine all 7 were red zone. Maybe they were.
No, I'm not sure on that. I have to look. Who had the most red zone rushes?
Lamar.
Yeah, that was a trick question. He wasn't that far ahead. Like it's Lamar, and then right behind him, Dobbins.
Hey, you know what, Andy? Yeah. He had one too few.
One too few. That's true. That should have been a rush and not a pass.
Should have been a rush, not a pass.
The win total is a little juicy for the over for my liking. I'm probably passing on that, looking to back them later, like we spoke about later in the season, getting in with them when we get to it, when their numbers become a little more reasonable after other teams show out and they have a maybe semi-rough start to the season.
We didn't mention this, but there's another good reason to wait. Everybody's fucking hurt.
That is true. The receivers will get healthy.
Jimmy Smith is hurt. Wide receiver, the entire wide receiver room is hurt. I'd like to see these guys get some reps, man. I mean, obviously we have a long way to go here before week 1. But don't love the idea of this much attrition. Although, it cuts both ways. When you have a bunch of injuries in training camp, your depth gets more first team reps. That helps you in the long term sometimes. You just got to make sure that these guys are ready to go week 1. And I'd like to see that before betting too much on these guys at this point, at least.
Yep. All right. I think we found a good spot on them. We're going to evaluate them during the season and find a entry position to add them to our portfolio. I almost hate it when people say portfolio, but I just said it too. So there we are. All right. That's the NFC Central's opponent, the AFC North. NFC Central, that's not a division anymore. The AFC North. And what are we doing next week?
Mark Andrews, by the way, before moving on, Mark Andrews receiving touchdowns prop 7.5, juiced to the over -125.
6.5. I would have bet. I think I don't like that. All right, what do we want to do next week? Papa calls, you make the call.
AFC West.
All right, he said AFC West. I was going to give you the chance. You didn't type fast enough.
Oh, yeah, we'll end. Oh, sorry.
Guy in the chat. No, I wasn't really going to let him. I was going to tell him, we can't do that one. I couldn't remember. We had already decided. We are going to do the NFC West last. That's a really interesting division. But yeah, the AFC West will be good. Yeah, this was a marathon. We spent like our best one. We spent a half hour on the Browns. Like we should next year. We've had to turn these into few. Eventually, it's just going to be one podcast per team.
This was our best one.
Starting in June.
This was our best one.
Don't
make a mistake. Don't make any mistake about that.
Yeah, it might take a couple.
Think about what now that we have a production team, we should put these guys.
Does it matter anymore? You can't be around on a Thursday.
Yeah.
Are we even doing Thursday Night Football this year? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask you. Would be would it be worthwhile to go back and cut all the ones we did into individual teams and repackage them, repurpose them, remaster them, and repost them so people could just go bang? I want to hear the Steelers. I don't want to listen to hour of the Bengals. You know,
a lot of them we have like 15 minutes of talking about the Olympics too.
Yeah, we could
cut some of that out too. Yeah, maybe we'll do some. Maybe we'll do some single serve singles like they do, because right now it's a single and a B-side.
I like that. I like that. Next year we'll set a second recording when we're actually talking about each team, and we'll have them all individual as opposed to the marathon eps. Even though this is fun, I love doing it this way. I don't want it helps my process.
No, I love these. So, all right, thanks for joining us. If you're in the YouTube chat, hit the thumbs up on the way out. Don't let the door hit you. We'll catch you next Monday. I thought we were doing halftime. Maybe we'll figure something out. There's a lot of games. We'll figure it out. Obviously, I might just produce it. So hit the music.